Welcome to Up Sports Podcast, your new go-to pod for sports entertainment, culture, and humor. Today we take a deep dive into the NBA playoffs, our over-under segment, and betting predictions. I'm Ty, and we're teed up.
Before we jump into today's podcast, our co-host Malik won't be able to attend today, so filling in is upcoming rapper Baby Kev.
Baby Kev.
Yeah, man, y'all know the deal. Got the project on the way. Big things coming soon.
All right, so today's podcast, we're going to talk strictly NBA since there isn't much else going on in the sports world besides hockey. None of us watch hockey, so we're not going to talk about that. Let's get right into this Warriors-Rockets Game 3. Game 4 is on tonight. Right now it's 7 o'clock, so we're going to be watching it as soon as the podcast is over. We're going to recap this game and Game 5 on our Thursday show. But to get into Game 3, it was a close game, went into overtime. The final score was 126 to 121. Just a great back-and-forth game all around. And then finally in overtime, the Rockets just pulled away, hit two big threes from Harden. And then Curry, at the end of the game, missed a dunk. So he had a pretty poor performance throughout the whole night. Went 7 for 23 on the floor and then 2 for 9 from 3. Do you guys think this affects his legacy, having this poor of a game?
Personally, I don't think it affects his legacy at all. Curry, we know who Curry is. Come on, MVP, champion. One bad game isn't going to, put a blemish on his legacy, especially not a game it's not a closeout game. It's not a finals game. Curry will be fine. Kev, what do you think about this?
I feel like with the three-point shot, it's just dangerous. In the regular season, there's not so much pressure, but as soon as you keep on getting further from the basket, that shot just becomes a little bit harder. And then when you keep on missing, it becomes a mental thing. And I think that's what plagues Curry and Clay a lot.
Well, with Curry, would you argue that he's kind of had a history of bad playoff games in his career, and he's never had that breakout playoff game? Would you argue that affects how you view him as a player? Because obviously a lot of people say he's a top 20 player all time, maybe even top 10. He's changed the game, obviously. There's no doubt about that. But do you think having these bad playoff games, I mean 7 for 23 is pretty atrocious with only 17 points.
We can't also forget about Klay Thompson. He was 6 for 16. That's not good either.
Well, I mean, Steph is held to a different standard than Klay. So to be fair, Klay, that's why Klay's job is the easiest, because he's not held to any sort of standards. He just got to make his three-pointers and do his thing defensively, and he always does that. But
true.
With Curry's looked at as a star. He has all these rings, but he's never been a Finals MVP and stuff. And last night he had such a bad game that it kind of brought up the discussion, especially on Twitter and on Instagram. Is Curry overhyped? Does this kind of stuff affect his playoff career?
I'm gonna be honest. That man Curry, he's the best shooter of all time. And he's definitely had those games where he goes crazy in the playoffs. That year, I believe it was a series against the Blazers, and Curry had just came off an injury, and that man went ballistic that game.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah, I still don't have much to say about this. The only thing I do have to say is that missed dunk at the end by Curry. Personally, I don't see why he just didn't lay the ball up. You could have had an opportunity there to maybe get a steal, then a three. Instead, he went for that dunk, which was unlikely. I didn't expect that.
I do know why he did that dunk.
Not only that, he must have had money on the game because the spread was +4 that game. They were down 5. If he made that dunk, it would have been boop. They would have covered the spread, and they didn't. So
honestly, I keep seeing on Twitter, Instagram, everything. Curry's been being very open with these dunks. He's trying all these new 360 dunks and stuff. I think he's trying to add this to his game, and I think he just got way too cocky at the end. He really. Those little gym dunks have been getting to his head. So that was a crazy attempt for what he did. I mean, me personally, I respect it. You're down 5. There's only 20 seconds left. A lot of people are kind of making that seem to be a bigger deal. Obviously, we had to write it as a segment today because it was talked about so much. I don't really see it as that big of a deal. They were already down 5, 20 seconds left. I get they can extend the game otherwise, but let's just be real here. The Rockets probably had this one in the bag regardless.
Anything is possible when you're playing the Warriors. It's actually not too it's pretty likely that they could get a steal and then shoot a 3 and it goes in, and now they're pushing double OT.
Let's talk about the Rockets a little bit. Harden had a fantastic game actually. He had 41 points on 14 for 32 shooting, Eric Gordon as well as a side piece just had 30 points. Can we talk about a little bit how underrated Eric Gordon has been in this series? He's been, and I mean, since he's been a Rocket, he's been probably the second best scorer on the team.
Definitely.
And he has such a great range from three. He's incredible at taking it to the basket. He's having a really good series. To me, we got to talk about him a little bit more.
Yeah, I like Eric Gordon a lot. He's a shooter. He complements Harden and Chris Paul. There's nothing. He was 7 for 14 from three that night, which is crazy.
That's great.
Yeah, 50% on 14 shots is bonkers. Kev, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna tell you who I don't think gets enough credit is PJ Tucker, because he has the assignment of guarding Kevin Durant. And if you saw late in the game, that man was grabbing offensive rebounds like he was 7 feet. He just plays with a different type of hustle, and I think if it wasn't for him, the Rockets would have lost.
That's a very good point. I joke about this all the time. I said this to Ty and Malik. I said PJ Tucker has the worst stat lines ever, and yet he's still like one of the most respected players. Like he'll have like 5 fouls, 0 points, 2 rebounds. You know what I mean? Like just these awful stat lines. But what he does on the defensive end and his hustle and his drive, he's kind of like the Draymond of the Rockets, if that makes sense. Obviously, he doesn't facilitate, and he plays a little different on the offensive end, but he's definitely underrated. And he had some clutch free throws in game 2 or game 1, I believe, that were very key to their success. But even though they lost,
just looking now too. Speaking of Draymond, I didn't realize he had a triple double. Like that was actually a good game for Draymond. It's kind of
Draymond's been stepping up these playoffs.
I used to like Draymond a lot, and then he started sucking, as of late. But if he's getting back to his form, I don't know. Might be a Draymond fan.
Draymond's definitely the dude who saves himself for the playoffs, for sure. Like KD, Curry, they're always going to show up, but Draymond specifically, he's always saving himself for the playoffs. Good. I mean, it was a fantastic game by both sides. Like that fourth quarter was incredible. I thought the Warriors were going to pull away. They're up 2 with like 40 seconds left, and they had ball. I figured they were just going to make a big time shot, and the Rockets are going to go down 0-3. But I mean, hey, the Rockets, they're alive here. They play Game 4 tonight. The spread is Warriors -1. The Rockets, so they're getting they're going to be a home underdog. What do you guys think the series is capable of going to?
7.
7?
7.
Yeah, 7 without a doubt.
I'm going to go.
It could go to 6 though.
I think the Rockets win tonight, but I think the Warriors are going to take it in 6. I mean, obviously, if the Warriors win tonight, the series is basically a wrap too when they're up 3-1. But there's something in me that's saying the Rockets have got this tonight. These games have all been so close. I think the Rockets are due just to have a blowout game. But anyways, let's get into the Nuggets-Blazers series. To me, this has been a really underrated series throughout the whole playoffs because it's obviously like the least important series if you really think about it. The East is incredible right now, and obviously the Warriors-Rockets series are so fun. But this is like a really good series if you're a basketball fan, just because it's a bunch of underrated players. The Nuggets are a team that play exactly like a team. There's some star power with guys like Damian Lillard and Jokic. Just the first game the first game at Portland, Game 3, went to quadruple overtime. The final score was 140 to 137. This game was just like a pickup ball game after the second overtime. Just guys running plays, doing everything as much as they can. Everyone playing like 60 minutes. Jokic had 65 minutes. And the storyline for this game was Jokic is going to be exhausted. Everyone thinks Jokic is out of shape. I read online that he used to have a soda addiction. So obviously everyone thinks of him as this fat kid who can't play basketball. He's unathletic. But he was playing 65 minutes. And guess what? Game 4, Nuggets come right back in it and win with an incredible performance by Jokic. He had a clutch triple-double. And then Jamal Murray, who had 34 points. Well, Kev, did you watch that game yesterday?
Nah, man, I honestly fell asleep. That series is really just a bunch of nobodies playing.
It's a good. Me personally, I really like the series. The Nuggets. I mean, that's a great game for them to win. This series is now tied 2-2. I really just a great overall team performance from the Nuggets, and I'm a little biased towards the Nuggets in the series just because there's nothing I really like about the Blazers. To me, they're just a bunch of guys with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. They don't really play like with any sort of chemistry. They just shoot a lot of threes and stuff. But the Nuggets just had a really gritty performance. The game got close at the end there. The Blazers were only down 3, but the Nuggets just kept fighting. Kept making clutch bucket after clutch bucket. Will Barton hit 2 threes in clutch time. He had a terrible game, but he saves himself. He went 4 for 14, 3 for 8 from 3. But those 2 threes that he hit were definitely super important. Gary Harris had a clutch mid-range shot. I mean, everyone had a good game. It looks like Paul Millsap had 21 points. He was plus 12 on the night. Jamal Murray with 34 points, obviously. And Jokic, I mean, he's kind of stole the show, as he always does. 21 points, 12 assists, or 11 assists, 12 rebounds. He has the most meaningful triple-doubles in the game.
Yeah, I like the Nuggets a lot. You know, I'm big on the Nuggets. Jokic is actually like one of my favorite players. So going into the series, I already had Nuggets coming out of this. I've been preaching them all season, as you guys know. Just good performance from the Nuggets. I expect them to close this series out pretty soon. They might lose one more, but I got Nuggets in 6.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Nuggets in 7. I think the Blazers are gonna have that game 6 at home. But to me, the Nuggets, I love them to win that game 5 at home. They've got momentum. They really. I mean, if you think about it, this series could be over. You know, the 2 games that the Nuggets lost were definitely some coin flips. Obviously, a quadruple overtime game. You know, anything could happen at that moment. And the game 2, you know, they lost, but they weren't making any sort of shots. They could have easily won that game. I think the Nuggets, they haven't really hit their form yet, but last night was a great example of them. When they're at 100%, they could beat anybody.
Also, I got a quick question. You know, Joel Embiid is like widely regarded as like the best center in the league right now, but he's been playing generally bad in the playoffs. Jokic is a center. Would you guys look at Jokic as maybe the best center in the league, or is he better than Embiid?
Well, to be honest, I feel like dominant big men are just detrimental to the flow of the offense. And today, since the NBA is so fast-paced, it takes a lot away from the cohesiveness of a team to just have a player that needs a bunch of dribbles, taking time off the clock. The way Jokic operates is very good for the team because he's looking to create plays. He's really good at cleaning up the glass. He's always getting a tip in, and his presence just brings a lot of energy, whereas Joel Embiid takes away from the team. And especially when you got someone that doesn't shoot like Ben Simmons, having Embiid and Simmons on the court at the same time is bad, because you'll see oftentimes Embiid is at the 3, and that man does not take a 3. He's always pump faking. He's not really a good shooter, so it's just bad. It's a bad combination to have Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Somebody has to get traded.
Yeah, just a little touching on that. I definitely do like Jokic. He's just a big man. I feel like that can do it all. He can shoot, he can pass, he can rebound. Personally, on my team, I'd rather play with Jokic than have Embiid on my team. But
I agree.
I think we should hop into
let's talk about Embiid.
Philly.
Let's talk about Embiid, because he had a really bad night. He only had 11 points on 2 for 7 shooting. Obviously, most of his points just coming from free throws. He had 7 free throws, 7 makes for free throws. He had 10 attempts. Just a bad game from Embiid and Ben Simmons. I mean, to me, these guys got to take over. And the series is now tied 2-2. The Sixers look dominant in some games, and in other games they look completely lackadaisical. That game 4 was a perfect example of the Sixers just looking terrible. And the Raptors barely scraped by this win. You know, the Raptors were at 100%. They were playing good. Great game by Kawhi. They still barely beat the Sixers just because they have so much talent. But the Sixers defense, like, I've never seen such bad defense for a playoff team. Like, they were literally leaving Kawhi open. We're going to talk about Kawhi in a little bit too, because he's been having like a Michael Jordan-esque performance. But let's talk about Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Like, what are these guys doing?
Well, I don't know at this point. You know, I was trying to preach. Ben Simmons is also another one of my favorite players. I like him a lot. I've been trying to preach him out, but there's only so much you can do. It's playoff time. You're gonna have to start like shooting the ball. If you're not shooting the ball, you got to be effective, getting to the rim, and it's kind of hard, like Kev said earlier, with Embiid in the way almost. And Embiid, him being arguably the best center in the league, he needs to be dominating more. We've seen it in that first series against the Nets, but I guess going up against like a more of a defensive-minded center like Marc Gasol, he doesn't seem to feel too comfortable. Overall, I think Philly has to tighten things up. The defense is horrible. Kawhi Leonard is just a monster. It's not like he's looking unstoppable. You know, every shot, even when they were guarding him, like hand in the face, doesn't matter. I'm shooting over you. Shot over Embiid, over Butler. Every player, they have Ben Simmons on him. I don't think he's even comfortable guarding Kawhi, to be honest. I'm not sure why they're doing that. But
well, they had Ben Simmons and Jimmy on him.
I mean, it doesn't matter what they try, to be honest. Like, it really doesn't matter. I don't know how they're gonna. I don't know how you stop Kawhi. Kev, what do you think about like that game as a whole in the series?
Well, what I always preach about is in order to be a true superstar, you have to be a three-dimensional player. You got to be able to drive, hit the mid-range, and hit the threes. And Kawhi can do all of that, and he's a great decision maker. You'll see oftentimes he almost plays like a robot. Like, he rarely makes mistakes, and he's always taking a great shot. He knows how to get to his spot. He's strong. He could finish. he basically has it all.
Yeah, honestly, what I have to just say about Kawhi is statistically, this man's having one of the greatest playoff series we've ever seen. Micah Adams 13 on Twitter tweeted out this stat, and it was just basic stat. Kawhi is averaging 38 points per game on 62% shooting so far this series. Jordan did this once. He averaged over 35 on 60% shooting in one playoff series. However, LeBron's never done this. Durant's never done this. Kobe's never done this. Shaq's never no other player has ever done this.
Yeah.
What Kawhi is doing is so incredible. He's completely consistent. Obviously, his defensive work is untalked about. I mean, not talked about enough. He's great defensively. He's always Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He's doing a great job in this series. He's taking players out of the game, but his offense has become so perfect. How much do you guys think this attains to either the Sixers defense being bad, because it is like truly atrocious. Definitely. They leave him open and stuff. Like, they made a lot of mistakes on Kawhi, and two, Kawhi taking that year off before this whole year and having a lot of games off throughout the year. Do you think Kawhi is just like feeling 100%, like feeling the best he's ever had?
Kawhi's just a player that he's great. He's mastered all the fundamentals to the game, basically. So it doesn't really matter what defense you throw at him. I mean, unless you're double teaming him, but that's really bad because of the team that he's around. He's around guys that are veteran champions like Danny Green. He has a solid big man in Marc Gasol that can shoot. So when you have a team like that, I mean, Kyle Lowry is probably the only weakness on that team. But I'm sure if you leave him open, Kyle Lowry's going to sink a few of them. So it's kind of hard to deal with Kawhi because if it's just single coverage, you're at his mercy.
A big thing that Kev goes on is he's not a fan of Jordan, and people have been talking about, like, listen, Kawhi's been going crazy. It's like almost Jordan back in the playoffs. So I gotta ask you guys a question. In the playoffs right now, what do you got? You got Kawhi or you got Jordan?
No, I can't. This is like the hottest takes ever. But I mean, you saw the stat. I mean, you saw the stat. Right now, Kawhi is having a Jordan-esque playoff series. And I think that's all that really needs to be said. I can't compare Kawhi to Jordan. Jordan's just much more accomplished, and Kawhi's career is not even done yet. But what Kawhi is doing right now is what Michael Jordan has done before. Only, like, Jordan's done this once. Kawhi's doing this once. Maybe Kawhi's going to do it again. Jordan's career is obviously over. Kawhi is capable of doing this again. I mean, what he's doing is so incredible that, like, I don't even know what I could possibly say about it. Like, you have to witness it yourself. It's truly what I'll say this instead of saying like something crazy about Jordan. Kawhi's definitely having the best playoff series. He's the best player in the playoffs right now compared to everybody left. Like throw Durant in there too, throw Giannis in there too. Like, Kawhi is having the best playoff series. He might be the best and most single important player in the playoffs.
So even with Kawhi's career not over, you're still taking Kawhi over Jordan, Kev?
Well, yeah, you see, the issue here is people forget that things are relative. Jordan looked like a man amongst boys because this basketball has been evolving. And basically, through the years, it's just like technology. As the years progress, people get better. When Jordan was playing, he was playing against guys that couldn't shoot a three to save their life. People were still shooting with two hands. The game has evolved. Jordan could never shoot the way Kawhi is from the three-point line. People weren't as offensively gifted. Well, not even gifted, but just skilled, because people nowadays, they're born and they're just going straight into the basketball camps. In Jordan's era, he was playing against some unathletic white guys who had just been playing for a few years. Like, it's not really the same. You got to look at things in relation to each other.
Jordan played against like stars and greats too, So what do you
think? No player like Curry back then.
Yeah, that's true. Curry's one of a kind.
I'm saying nowadays people like freaks of nature like Giannis, they're becoming more abundant in the league. Back then, things evolve. So to say that Jordan is the best ever when he was playing 20 years ago, that's just kind of disrespectful to humanity in itself, to think that we're downgrading, because we're obviously getting better. Technology is getting better. Nutrition is getting better. Basketball programs are getting better. People are learning the fundamentals. They're learning the best shooting angles. Basketball is just better now than it was back then.
I'm gonna add this just for the rest of the Raptors Sixers series. I know I've been saying it a lot. I've just basically said it the whole podcast. The Sixers defense is truly atrocious, though, and this is kind of the thing that the Thunder did against Dame as well. What is the reason the Sixers don't just throw like two guys at Kawhi or just trap Kawhi at the half court or do anything? Like, to me, they're literally letting Kawhi score at will. They're letting Kawhi take shots that he likes. They're letting Kawhi get open from three. They're letting Kawhi get space for a mid-ranger. Like, to me, they're just not playing defense properly. And when they throw Embiid on a switch or when they throw like Jimmy Butler on a switch, these guys are not doing what I know that they're capable of. So to me, this series is going to end quick because you have to have real defense. You have to have real urgency in a playoff series. It feels like the Sixers think that the Raptors are some 8 seed.
I'm gonna just say here, it's not even like Philadelphia's fault.
No, it is.
Kawhi's unguardable. You can't. Like, I was watching the game. You can't, even when they were there, like he was making the shots. Kawhi's unguardable. And to that point, going into the next round, let's say Raptors take this one. Whoever the Raptors do play, either the Bucks or the Celtics, do you think anyone on either of those teams will be able? Do you think those teams will be able to like do a better job at stopping him than Philadelphia did? How you feel?
I don't think it's possible because a player like Kawhi, he's just so fundamentally sound. He's a great 3-point shooter, and then he could pump fake. He could take the mid range. There's nothing offensively that he cannot do.
So you don't see maybe like a player like Giannis potentially disrupting Kawhi's rhythm?
Well, the problem is that basketball is too fast. There's too much switching. There's not just one person. You could put the greatest defender ever on somebody. That one pick will give a player enough time to get their shot off comfortably. So it's not like one person can stop Kawhi. It has to be the whole team.
I definitely agree with that. I think, though, however, whoever they play in the next round, whether it be the Celtics or the Bucks, both those teams are just way better defensively. Like the Sixers, like to me, the Sixers have the worst defense in the playoffs, period, out of everybody left. The Nets were dropping 120 plus on their head, and the Nets have like nobody of notice besides D'Angelo Russell. The Celtics, as a team, as a unit, they have a very good defense. They have defensive schemes. Obviously, Giannis has been putting up numbers against them, but the first game they shut down Giannis. And the Bucks are just a really tall team. Like the Bucks are super elite at just like protecting the rim and forcing you to shoot like mid-rangers and bad jump shots theoretically. And so I think Kawhi, as great as he's doing, I think he's going to finish this series, close it out with the series win, and he'll definitely deserve like the MVP of this series and the playoffs. I mean, he's literally carrying his team single-handedly, in my opinion, because nobody else is stepping up. But I think whoever they play next, if they get past the Sixers, I think Kawhi's going to be in, not for a rude awakening, but he's definitely going to have a little bit more trouble. But let's talk about the Bucks and Celtics right now. Let's get right into that. This game is on currently. We're not watching it, but we have the StatCast up, the game, the play-by-play. The Bucks take a 2-1 series lead. Whether or not they take a 3-1 series lead, which will effectively end the series or not, we don't know. Kev, what are your thoughts for this series? Do you think the Celtics can tie it up?
And I feel like every game has been there for the taking for the Celtics. Game 1, we saw it. They shut down Giannis, and Giannis's teammates weren't making the shots. So that was excellent. You know that's going to be a blowout if Giannis and his teammates are ineffective. In Game 2, they did a solid job at containing Giannis. By halftime, everything was good. It was looking great for the Celtics. And then all of a sudden, they collapsed. It was horrible. Nobody could score. I think they went on a stretch. Man, I believe the stat was like 2 for 12 over a period of like a quarter. But it's like there was a lid on the basket. Everything that was going wrong everything that could go wrong was going wrong. Turnovers. And then Game 3, it was basically deja vu. The game looks competitive. After halftime, the Celtics absolutely collapsed. You let George Hill score 21 and Pat Connaughton score 14. They were looking like superstars. And even that, I still felt like the Celtics could have won Game 3, but they just became careless. I feel like with a team like the Celtics, they have problems with cohesiveness, and they really just got too emotional. They let their guard down. They weren't hustling enough, and the Bucks definitely came to play, and they won.
Yeah, going back to what Kev said, both games 2 and 3, we had it. at points we were up in the game before halftime, and then coming out of halftime we kind of just fell apart. And you guys know I'm a big Celtics fan, so this is pretty really upsetting for me. And as a whole, we have to do better down the stretch. Can't be just giving up the game like this. George Hill is not a 21 guy in the playoffs. He's not gonna give you 21 points a game. He shouldn't be allowing that. He's not a star. He's not a superstar. He's not a star. Period. Same goes for Connaughton. Kyrie Irving was 8 for 22 that game. He's been past couple games. He's been a little rough. He's gonna have to improve that as well. Max, what's your takes on Bucks and Celtics? I know you're big on the Bucks. I don't know why, but
I'm big on the Bucks, and I've really been trying to tell all of my friends, obviously my co-hosts here and Malik, they're all kind of saying the Celtics are going to win the series, and I was openly saying the Bucks are the better team here. I mean, just basically look at it from a numbers perspective. The Bucks are the 1 seed. The Celtics are the 4 seed. The Bucks have been clear coasting. They've been the best team in the NBA since the opening day. And the Celtics have been kind of abysmal. The Celtics were the favorite to win the East. Obviously, the expectations kind of got to them. They've just been a disappointing team. You could look at it that way. But really, in a head-to-head matchup, I think this is why I like the Bucks even more, is the Bucks' game plan is so elite. What they do is they have the LeBron strategy for Giannis, and what that strategy is you have a dominant post player, you have a dominant player in the paint, and he kicks it out to a bunch of excellent shooters. We just turned the game on, by the way, so we're gonna have a little live talk about it. Middleton just drained a 3 as soon as I said that. But basically the way they run the offensive scheme is just so elite, because if you leave Giannis in a one-on-one scenario where he's driving to the paint, he's probably gonna win that battle. I don't know, 70% of the time. If you put another player on him, his ability to pass the ball is incredible. He has good IQ. Obviously, sometimes he makes some errors and he might not find the guy open right away. But what they do is just a smart scheme. They're gonna kick it out to shooters, guys like Chris Middleton. Brook Lopez is a good shooter now. Malcolm Brogdon isn't in this series, but when he's back, that's an excellent shooter.
I don't think he's coming back.
I think he'll be back next round. But on the defensive end, the Bucks do something even more, what I find more impressive. So what the Bucks have effectively done against the Celtics is they take away the 3 ball. Nobody could shoot a 3, and if they do shoot a 3, it's a contested 3. It's technically a difficult shot. The Bucks are a very tall team, right? Everyone on the team is just really tall. Kyrie has been struggling this whole series because the team is taller than him. Kyrie's not necessarily a tall guy. He's I think 6'3".
Yeah, 6'3".
They're putting Chris Middleton on him, who's 6'8". They got Giannis on him at times. They just have too much tall guys, and the way they play defense is surrounded by protecting the paint and protecting the 3. So how do the Celtics win this series? They have to turn guys who are not good shooters into effective mid-range shooters who can make 50%. So who are the guys shooting the shots? Marcus Morris, Al Horford, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. None of these guys are effective enough shooters to win you a playoff series because they're taking away.
That's cap.
No, it's really.
Well, it shows it right here. Marcus Morris is 47% from 3 for the playoffs right now. That was actually a cap statement.
Marcus Morris has been performing well, but if you're depending on Al Horford to hit mid-range shots,
he's been hitting them though. He's been hitting them.
Yeah,
He does that.
Think about it. The Celtics have been doing a pretty damn good job, and yet they're still down 2-1. Because why? Because the mid-range shot is not that effective. It's just not an effective enough shot. It's effective down the clutch. It's effective when you really need a bucket in a close game. But if that's all you're shooting throughout the game against a team that is super efficient and super high 3-ball shooting, you're probably not going to win the game. And the Bucks, I mean, this is a great strategy by Mike Budenholzer. Even if they tie this series 2-2, say the Celtics win this game, they're going to have those 2 games at home. They have momentum. I mean, the Bucks, I just like them a lot more in this matchup and in this series.
Well, I mean, I think also a huge problem is the defense. Like we were going back to the people that are scoring that shouldn't be scoring. But we just got Marcus Smart back for this game, and he was huge for us on defense. If you look up the stats, he actually has a positive effect on the defensive end when he's on the floor. So I think a lot of the defensive weaknesses are going to be changed now with Marcus Smart back in the lineup.
It's all the defense. You see the Celtics, they're putting a little bit too much emphasis on stopping Giannis. The problem is Giannis is going to get his because he's just a freak of nature. He's too big down there. Yeah, Al Horford could do a good job, but then when you got Baines on him, then when you got the switch and he's coming down with a full head of steam, not even Al Horford could do anything. So we got to stop triple teaming Giannis and all of that. You got to close out on shooters better. There's no reason why Chris Middleton should ever be shooting an open three. And then you got Pat Connaughton just stepping up. George Hill is looking like he's 23 years old. Like that guy just lit everything up. And those guys, they shot such a great percentage. It's not going to happen again. Hopefully the Celtics could take the game tonight because, man, that game 3 was just horrible.
I think with Marcus Smart back, the game's for the taking tonight. Max, go ahead.
I personally dislike Marcus Smart a lot. I get he's like the heart of the team, and he's effectively like their Draymond of the team. I kind of hate using that term because it's just basic. But what I mean by that is he's like the heart of the team, and on top of that, he brings a defensive like ferocity to the game. However, I think Marcus Smart is so like pitiful offensively. Like you want Marcus Smart taking shots more than anybody else on the floor because he's just a really terrible shooter, and he shoots a lot. Like he's very confident in his shot, even though it's broke. Defensively, obviously, yeah, he's pretty good, but he's smaller. He's like the smallest defender on the team besides Kyrie, obviously. So he's going to be guarding up like Chris Middleton and stuff. I don't like that. Doesn't matter to me. I think Chris Middleton can still get a shot up off that. If he's double teaming Giannis, Mark Smart's kind of a hack. He's gonna foul him. You know, it's just that simple. He's not gonna be effective against Giannis. So I think obviously Mark Smart is definitely an upgrade over like Jason Tatum getting starting minutes because Jason Tatum's been abysmal. But I still don't think he's a big enough factor to really swing the series. Like he's not that important as an individual player. But I know Celtics fans really, really like this guy. I just haven't seen enough of him. I mean, obviously I've watched him a lot, but I just don't see really his impact on the floor immediately.
The thing is, with Marcus Smart, I feel like the Celtics need a leader for the defense because besides Al Horford, nobody is really making their statement. Perhaps Jaylen Brown sometimes, but you just need a defensive leader sometimes. And that, not to stray away from the point, that was what the Lakers were missing a lot. And I feel like that contributed a lot because when you look at a team, the Celtics, they were just pitiful defensively. A lot of people didn't want to take responsibility. It's almost like they're playing with their head down. And when you get the defense amped up, that contributes to your offense as well. So I feel like Marcus Smart, he could have a good impact tonight. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, Marcus Smart definitely is our defensive anchor. And of course, great defense leads to good offense. Well, I think now let's get into our little Q&A segment. Today we've got a question from at Zeke_Barnhill2 on Instagram. Do you guys think anyone can stop the Warriors?
They're looking very shaky because we already know the Warriors before Kevin Durant, they lost a 3-1 lead. Kevin Durant lost a 3-1 lead. So we all know what they're capable of. It's just all of them being together that makes them unstoppable. But when you see a lot of their opponents, well, for right now, we'll talk about the Rockets. They're playing with more passion than the Warriors. The Warriors, oftentimes they won't play to their fullest extent because they almost feel like they aren't getting challenged. That's why they dropped 2 games to the Clippers. But definitely this year is the worst the Warriors have looked.
I'm going to go ahead and say if anyone gives the Warriors a problem, it's someone from the East. More specifically, the Bucks or the Raptors or the Sixers. I think the Celtics just aren't good enough offensively to compete with the Warriors. I don't think the Sixers are going to win the series with the Raptors, but if they do and they somehow beat the Bucks as well, I think they just have enough star power to make some noise. And head-to-head this year, the Sixers just looked like it kind of just looked like a weird matchup for the Warriors. I don't know why. I think maybe it's the length, maybe it's just the overall weight of these guys. Like the Sixers are just a more physical team, it appears. But the Sixers look pretty good against the Warriors. I think the Bucks are capable of beating the Warriors just because they just have a lot of momentum right now. I mean, they have like a really good system, as I talked about. And then the Raptors are so defensive minded. You'd really, really like the Warriors would have to depend a lot on clutch shooting and hard, difficult shots being made down the stretch. Now the Warriors have proven for years that they're capable of that. That's why they're a successful team. But I don't necessarily think anyone can stop them and win, beat them necessarily. I think, however, if someone does, to my opinion, it would be whoever comes out the East.
Yeah. As much as I love the Celtics, much as I like Philly, the Warriors are just too unstoppable. You got the greatest shooter of all time, arguably the second greatest shooter of all time, arguably one of the greatest scorers of all time, all on the same team. You got defense, you got Steve Kerr, Andre Iguodala. I just feel like the Warriors have too much for. They'd have to. The only people stopping the Warriors is themselves. I think they'd have to have a meltdown in order for them to lose. But if they're having their good night and other teams having their good night, the Warriors just have too much, you know?
I think one of the Warriors' main issues, and I don't know if this is going to be exposed necessarily, but to me it's just something that it's a way to take advantage of them, is the Warriors' lack of depth. Right now, the reason they're up in this series is Andre Iguodala's been having great games. Draymond Green's been having great games. Kevon Looney hasn't really been playing much, but he's also had a positive impact on the team. Are these the guys that can be difference makers in, a playoff series versus a better team? Like, obviously, we're seeing it right now with the Rockets. Andre Iguodala is being phenomenal. They're leaving him open. They're kind of daring Andre Iguodala to beat them, and he's doing so. He's been stepping up majorly. It hasn't really been, and Kevin Durant obviously has been incredible. Steph and Klay have been, fairly quiet. Obviously, Klay does his thing on the defensive end, but right now they're taking a back seat, and it's kind of the role players who are making a lot of noise, and Kevin Durant. I don't know if this is something that can continue for a long period of time, but I think that's the Warriors' real weakness, is their lack of depth. Because when that bench comes in, that's your advantage to go on a run and maybe get some points in and cut into the lead if you're down, or build a better lead if you're up.
Oh man, I'm gonna be honest. I feel like the Warriors bench is one of the best in the league. The Warriors, man, Andre Iguodala, that's a whole Finals MVP. That man is big time.
Andre.
He's legit.
I love him. He's a really key player for that team, but I don't know if his success can be sustained offensively, more specifically.
Man, Sean Livingston, that's the guy. I feel like you could depend on him. He has his signature moves. He's great. We haven't seen Quinn Cook play, but from past playoffs, that man can definitely do some damage. And it's not like all it's not like all five of the bench are going to be playing at the same time. It's the starters mixed with the bench. I feel like, man, when you got the two best shooters of all time and then what I believe to be the greatest offensive player ever, there's just too much backup plans for you. It's really hard to lose.
Let's get into our over-under segment, where we talk about over-under point spreads or over-underrated. We're going to do specifically NBA players today. Usually we talk about the NFL regular season win totals. That's what we've been doing for the past week, I believe. But we're going to since Malik isn't here, he's like our main football guy. He loves football. We're just going to talk about over-underrated players for the playoff performances so far. So we got three guys here today: Jamal Murray, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Chris Paul. Let's start off with Jamal Murray. Over-underrated. What do you guys think?
Man, Jamal Murray, I feel like that guy, he's underrated. And I don't feel like it's a problem. So I might just have to go with, it's almost like he's being rated fairly, because the playoffs, that's where you earn your stripes. He's still a really young guy. Is it his first year in the playoffs?
Yeah. It is. Most of the team is first year of their playoffs, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So to say that he's underrated or overrated, we can't really say that, because this is where he has to define himself.
He had 34 points last night and some great numbers. I think 50% and 11-11 from the line.
Yeah, I like Jamal Murray a lot. I wouldn't say he's overrated at all. Like, how could he be overrated? I honestly think he's underrated. I do agree with Kev's point a little bit, though. You have to earn your stripes in the playoffs, so that does make sense. I'd say he's just underrated.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say underrated as well. And the reason I believe this is just because, I think there's really one flaw in his game, and sometimes he's a little full of himself, but that man is really a bucket. And what I mean by that is he could really score at will at any given time. His three-point shot is consistent.
I don't know about that.
No, he really can. Genuinely. I mean that. He's a very solidified scorer. He does his thing every single night. He's the main scorer of this team. If he has a bad game, the other guys got to pick it up, and I don't know if they're talented enough offensively to do so.
I'm not gonna say he can just score at whenever he wants to. Yeah, that's crazy,
not like that's like all right, not like a Kevin Durant. Yeah, all right, not like Kevin Durant, but he can score in efficient ways. All right, he's not just jacking up shots. He's not shooting 40 times a game and missing. Obviously, in this specific example, we have the 4 overtime game. He shot 32 times. That's 4 overtimes. It's like a whole nother game at that point. Yeah.
Too. It's not bad.
So he like Jamal Murray is a consistent shooter. He's like the guard of this team, the main scorer. To me, he's underrated because he's kind of taken the Nuggets to where they are right now. Obviously, you could talk about Jokic, but if take away Jokic, you need somebody to actually make the buckets. I think Jamal Murray, he's the guy.
Well, without Jokic, they're like nothing, I'd say.
Well,
So,
yeah, you could argue that.
You need Jokic.
Anyways, let's get into Giannis Antetokounmpo, over underrated. Kev, you start because as far as I know, you kind of dislike Giannis, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, man, it's really sad because like Ty definitely knows when this is perhaps the first year LeBron had he came back to Cleveland. I was definitely looking at Giannis. I was like, oh man, this guy, he could definitely become something. And the reason I saw that is because I saw a documentary of him. And I saw his work ethic. I saw his attributes. Like, this guy's like 7 feet tall and he can move like a guard. I saw that and I was really enthusiastic about that. But then it seems like out of nowhere, overnight, he just took the biggest jump. Now people are calling him the best player in the world when he hasn't really improved enough. He still doesn't have any. I mean, his signature move is the dunk, but he needs to.
That's an efficient shot, though.
Yeah, it is.
Efficient shot.
Yeah, it's the most efficient shot in basketball, of course. But I just feel like he hasn't done enough to be called the best player in the league right now. I feel like he's just overhyped too much. And the problem with that is that as much as I was rooting for him, hearing all the people praise him too much, just it put like a sour taste in my mouth. And now I don't like him.
So you just don't like Giannis because of the hype, but not necessarily because of his gameplay.
Yeah, but it's not really like that because even though Steph Curry was the hype in 2016 and I was hating on him, I couldn't really downplay him because of how offensively talented he really was. There was no flaw in Curry's game besides the defensive end. But when we look at Giannis, yeah, he's probably shooting 50%, but out of what? Probably he's went like.
I'm not going at 3-point 50%.
Yeah.
That's the next thing. I don't think he can sustain that at all.
I'm gonna get into that. So let me talk about Giannis here real quick because I think this segment's a little difficult because I don't want to call Giannis underrated. He's been all the talk since the playoffs have started, basically. But I want to say underrated because I think people still like disrespect the impact he has on his team. This man is like having like LeBron-esque numbers. I'm gonna get into this right now. He's averaging 27.7 points a game. He's 44% field goal percentage, 50% from three. Obviously, that's a little fluky, but like that's the stats. He shoots threes every game. You know, obviously he's not chucking 10 a game, but 50% from three is definitely respectable. 10.3 rebounds a game, 4.7 assists. To me, that's actually a low number for assists. I expect him to have more. He passes the ball. Like, he's such a facilitator that those assist numbers seem a little skewed. So, like, his impact on the passing game is definitely more than that little 4.7 assists that we're talking about. And then 1.7 blocks a game. So almost 2 blocks a game. Like, those are some absurd numbers, you know, and his team runs through him. He's kind of the engine of the Bucks. To me, I mean, I got to say underrated a little bit because I just don't think enough people are really noticing his game. It seems like the playoffs have been all about Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, and Damian Lillard. But let's talk about Giannis. I mean, they've lost one playoff game thus far, and that was the game he played worse. He's making this team run insanely well.
Man, we've saw a glimpse of what happens when Giannis's teammates aren't having otherworldly nights. That game one was a perfect example. If you shut down Giannis and you have good defense, what would happen? And honestly, the Celtics, they've been in position to win almost every game. They just have those collapses where they can't make a single bucket. And I feel like that's made all the difference. I don't feel like it's anything exceptional of Giannis or anything related to him. I just feel like the Celtics have been melting down like the past 2 games after the half.
I mean, to me, those numbers speak for themselves. Like, you don't just put up those numbers as a fluke, you know?
His usage rate is like through the roof.
I mean, that the team run, like, he's the engine of the team. Like, he's the, like, just how Jokic is the same way for the Nuggets. You know, Jokic is the kind of the engine for the team. Everything runs through him, whether he passes the ball or whether he ends up shooting the ball or just putting a putback or whatever. Giannis is the same way. You know, I feel like every team needs a guy with that high usage rate. The Warriors are a little different, you know, because they have like 3 guys who are capable of doing that, like 2-ish, to be honest. But, you know, the Rockets do that with Harden. The Raptors are kind of doing it with Kawhi. It doesn't really work like that all the time, but they kind of do it. And then the Sixers need a guy like that. They need somebody with the usage rate because right now the Sixers are kind of in disarray. But let's get into our last player for the over underrated segment, Chris Paul. I'm gonna go ahead and start this one. think Chris Paul is insanely overrated, man. Last year when they went to 7 with the Warriors, he was having a great series. He was definitely like a main reason that the series went to 7. But right now, I mean, Chris Paul has just been disappointing to me. He has terrible numbers shooting the ball. I know it's Chris Paul. You know, he's definitely a great plus-minus guy. He's definitely important to the team. There's no doubt about that. And me, like the way I felt about Chris Paul his whole career is it's like a light switch. Some years I think he's really underrated. I think he's definitely a big aspect to his team, like those Clippers years. But recently, since he's been a Rocket, I don't know. Right now, this year, he hasn't impressed me at all. Maybe it's the injuries, maybe him getting old. I'm going to go ahead and say overrated. I think he's just not helping his team win any games. He's not really doing anything for me. I haven't seen a lot.
Yeah, I like Chris Paul a lot. Like personally, I like him, but right now in this series, I'm gonna have to say he's overrated. It's not overrated because he's just playing poorly, but also I just feel like he's not doing enough for his team. Being arguably the second best player on his team, he has to be doing more. You know, game 2, he shot under 50%, under 40% from 3. He had his he had 6 assists. You know, he's supposed to have more than that. He's technically the floor general for that team. And then in game 3 as well, he didn't really play good. He only played 44 minutes, only had 8 shots. But I mean, I guess it's not a problem when you're winning. Kev, how you feel about Chris Paul?
And honestly, I feel like Chris Paul, he's overrated. But the reason I'm gonna say this, it's not necessarily because he's been performing weak in the playoffs. It's just sometimes, and this might be a consequence of playing with James Harden, but he can't do enough. It seems like he's not fast enough. He's not quick enough. His shot isn't good enough for the defense now. It seems like the age is really getting to him. And also when you have such a person with a crazy through the roof usage rate as Harden, it's going to bring down from your game. So I just feel like Chris Paul, he could be doing more for sure.
Let's get into the betting segment where we give out our picks. Let's do a quick record recap. Right now, your boy is 3-1. So if you like making money, definitely listen to me. Ty's 2-3. Malik, who isn't here, he's not gonna have a pick today. He's taking the week off. 2-2. Anyways, let's get our picks for today. I'm gonna start. I got a little parlay for you guys. Now I know parlays are a sucker bet. I actually am not gonna bet this with real money. I'm not gonna bet this for real money, but this is like a fun little pick for the show, and it's a bet I definitely like. So I wouldn't do this for a lot of money, but just it's my pick. Got a parlay with the Raptors and Nuggets money line for tomorrow on Tuesday. The Raptors are -6, so it's kind of a fat money line. I think it's like -250, and the Nuggets are -4.5, so that's also a little fatter money line. But we're gonna combine these. To me, I just think I don't know. There's not really a world where I think either like the Blazers or the Sixers win either of these games. I think both of these home teams, crucial game 5s, crowds are going to be roaring. To me, I'm just kind of sold on both these teams winning. I think the Raptors are the better team than the Sixers. I think the Nuggets are a better team than the Blazers. I like this parlay. Can't go wrong with it. Don't put the house on it. It's just for fun. I don't usually do parlays for this exact reason because they're kind of stupid to me. But to me, I just don't see either of these favorites losing.
Yeah. So all you fans out there who aren't quite aware of what a parlay is, by the way, pretty much what a parlay is just if you bet Raptors and Nuggets money line tonight, the Raptors and the Nuggets both have to win in order for you to win your bet. If one of them loses and one of them wins, you don't win the bet. With that being said, I've got the Sixers +6.5 going into the game against the Raptors. Pretty much, they lost the last game. What was it? I think it was actually by 6. They won the game before that, and then they got blown out that first game. I think this is going to be like a pretty high-scoring game. I think both sides are going to bring it. If they do lose, not by more than 7. So, Kev, what about you?
Yeah, I feel like Sixers +6.5 is just easy money. I feel like the trend has been lately, there's been a lot of blowouts in these playoffs. Like a lot of these teams that we see being like capable, they've been getting blown out. Like the Raptors have been getting washed. The 76ers have been getting blown out. Like it's been really hard to predict, but I just got a feeling that today things are going to be clicking for both teams. And I feel like the Raptors will win, but to give the 76ers +6.5, I don't feel like the Raptors are that overwhelmingly better. So I feel like that's the bet to take. And I also feel like over 211.5 is good. I feel like this is going to be a really high energy game where I feel like Kyle Lowry's going to get out of that slump. We're going to see a lot of the 76ers players step up, and I feel like it's just going to be very entertaining to watch.
Well, that's pretty much all we have today. I want to give a special thanks out to our guest, Kev. You can follow him on Instagram at Kev Got Heat. Got anything else to say for the viewers, Kev?
Man, we just got to wait and see. The future is lit, and I want everybody to stay blessed and enjoy their days.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in to Up Sports Podcast. As always, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at TU Sports Pod if you don't already. Be sure to leave us a question for next episode, and we will give you a shout out. You could DM us on Twitter or send us a message on Instagram, and we will we'll pick 1 or 2 a week and reply on the show. You could listen to us on SoundCloud. You can listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on Podbean. Shout out Podbean. Give us a follow. Listen to us anywhere. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm Brock, and I'm out.
I'm Ty, and I'm out.
Baby Kev.